Welcome to our monthly Disciple Makers webinar, where we will be unpacking our monthly focus. This month, us at Disciples Made are focusing on the theme, New Results Require a New Thing. What a powerful truth to begin the year with. So as leaders, as pastors, and disciple makers, we often find ourselves yearning for fresh fruit, deeper impact, and transformed lives. But let's be honest, sometimes we rely on old methods, hoping for new results. So today we're going to go ahead and we're going to explore a bit of a new paradigm, some things that the Lord has been, granting us just the vision to flesh out and to help us step into the new thing that God may be calling you toward. So we hope today's conversation will challenge and also encourage all of you as we think about what it really means to live and lead the fully alive way. So feel free to grab a journal, a cup of coffee, or just listen in as you reflect on these with us. And as always, we are graced, or I am graced rather, with Brian Phipps, the founder of Disciples Made, Myra Schrader, who's our women's catalyst, and Craig Watson, who is not here with us today. He's our men's catalyst. And so for those tuning in, perhaps for the first time to this webinar, Myra, I'd love for you to introduce yourself just a little bit more. Tell us about who you are and what you're excited about this year. And Brian will throw to you the same questions.
All right. I am Myra Schrader. I am a former church staff member in Discipleship for between care ministry and discipleship about 20 years, and tried a whole lot of things in terms of discipleship, and looked for the right thing. And it was one of those, let's try this, and come back to it. Came across Disciples Made 7 or 8 years ago and went, this is exactly what I've been looking for. So I am now retired. I volunteer and serve with Disciples Made and at my church, Christ Lutheran in Overland Park, Kansas. I am married. I have 3 adult sons, and keep very busy doing all the things that I love to do. I said when I retired, I'm going to retire to do the things I want to do for the church, not the things that I have to do. So right. Church work sometimes is a lot of have-tos too, just like every job.
Yeah. Love that. I heard one person say one time that really when it comes to leading in the kingdom of Jesus, there's no such thing as retirement, just a repositioning. And it sounds like you're right. You're just in a season, Myra, of getting to do what you love and what is fruitful, what's fulfilling, and what makes you come alive as well.
And feeling so blessed.
Absolutely. Well, it is an honor to journey alongside you in our disciple making efforts. And sure. Brian, I'm going to throw it to you. Tell us about you and what you're looking forward to.
Well, I think I'm, like a lot of people, overwhelmed at the beginning of the year with big goals we set for ourselves. But for me, I am a pastor of about 30 years, been married to my wife for about that long, or just over that long, 30 years. We have 3 adult kids, a daughter and 2 sons. I was in local pastoral ministry for 25 of that, and stepped out about 6.5 years ago to do Disciples Made full time. Disciples Made actually started within, the church where I served last. I was there for almost a decade, and it was there that God just gave the vision for multiplication and said, this is the new thing. That's not the new thing. I mean, multiplication was the thing that Jesus did. So it's not new, but he was like, this is what you're going to do here. I brought you here for this. And that's where all of this new thing was born for me. And so that's what captured my heart, is more and more churches like Myra's wanting to learn from what we were doing. And so that has become my full-time gig now for 8 years. And for this year, we've got an interesting little shift for us at Disciples Made. We took a big detour, just like a change, a God-led, Spirit-led change of direction about 3.5, 4 years ago. Whereas Disciples Made has always kind of been focused and from its legacy perspective, helping churches succeed in multiplying disciples. That's what we were for a long time. That's what I was when we started out. But about 3.5, 4 years ago, we're like, how do we create this to be for the average disciple maker? They're not on staff at a church. They might be in business. They might be at home, wherever it is. How do we create that for them? And of course, the Fully Alive app was created. And we are a much richer and broader resource now for people around the world. But then a spirit-led thing at our board meeting that y'all were at this past October. It's like, now that that's there, it's time to scale as much as we can. We got all the systems and processes. Let's get ready and let's go back and let's help disciple makers do that. And it's very exciting. It's overwhelming. We've had to kind of retool again. But we're now on the very front end of taking the planning we did last quarter and jumping in to execute. So it's fun. It's overwhelming. Absolutely overwhelming.
It's absolutely overwhelming. It's incredibly exciting, because our 2040 vision is 2 million people living more fully alive because of the investment of 70,000 disciple makers. And so that is a big goal. That's a BHAG right there. And so, just that big, hairy, audacious goal. And it's a God-sized dream. Yeah. And so kind of breaking that down kind of has the Disciples Made team and coaches and everybody that is a part of this beautiful mission is that our goal by the end of this year, so in the next 12 months, is 25,000 disciples. And I think it ends up being around just about 8,000 disciple makers in total since 2011. Is that right, Brian?
Well, we've reached just about 5,500 total people just directly that have been through Followers Made or Leaders Made. We need to take that number to 25,000. So that's about 16,800 this year, new disciples. But our focus, as you said, is on the disciple maker. And so I can't remember how many disciple makers we have to date, probably somewhere around 500. And that needs to go up to the 900 or so.
That's right.
This year.
I added a 0. That's what I did.
Yeah. Thank you for making my head fall.
Yeah, just more overwhelming. So that's why you brought me on the team is just to keep overwhelming everybody. So
yes.
Well, and that's obviously what I shouldn't say obviously, but I mean that's what I'm most excited about is that I am on officially day 7 of being on the Disciples staff. And so I am just so incredibly humbled and excited just about this new season. It's been a while since I've been in a co-vocational role, but continuing on staff at Gloria Dei Lutheran down here in Southeast Houston, Texas, continuing to beat the drum of disciple multiplication in a large prevailing model church. And then the other half get to help more churches do what we're doing and see disciples actually multiply into this fully alive life as we grow in character and calling to make this world a little bit more like heaven. And so it's a beautiful thing. And that's a bit about what we'll be talking about today in our webinar as we start off 2025 today. And because we want to help you, whether you're a church leader, volunteer leader, staff member, pastor, senior pastor, business leader, marketplace missionary, maybe is what a phrase that some of you are used to hearing. But so disciple makers, as we want to help you today be able to set your eyes on some perhaps new results, perhaps take some steps in reimagining with us a little bit about what a disciple is, what a disciple does, how you become a disciple, and the role of a disciple maker, because we're longing for some new results. And if you're with us today, perhaps you're stuck and you want to see something new, but you're kind of just the life of church just has you keep going. And so kind of fighting for that time to reprioritize. And so that's our hope for you guys today is our January theme is new results require a new thing. And so before we kind of kick off maybe with an intentional question, Brian, is there anything that perhaps you just kind of like to share before we get in, or do you want me just to jump in with that first question?
Well, I was ready to roll, but since you've asked, I mean, there's always something right there, right?
That's what I do. Yeah.
Well, it just reminds me of that saying, like your systems are perfectly designed to get the results that you're currently getting, right?
Yeah.
And what when you spouted off kind of the focus, if you want new results, you got to do a new thing. Like that statement really just pops out to the fore. And I think we're about to ask questions like, what makes people get stuck? And I would say right off the bat, not paying attention to the validity of that statement.
Yeah.
Because we try to tweak and massage what we're doing to get a different result more than we really look at it and go, okay, where is this fundamentally limited or broken? And what needs to be shifted in order to get a new result. So anyway, that was just what was top of mind, was that statement when you said it.
No, I love it. And that quote in particular just makes so much sense that, like, yeah, our systems are designed to get the results they're currently getting. So we need to change something a little bit deeper than just what it is that we do. And so here's my first question, is that what paradigms of discipleship? So as we're talking about new results require a new thing, what paradigms of discipleship, disciple making, perhaps do we need to dismantle or let go of in order to see new results in 2025?
Go, Myra.
What first comes to mind as I think about it is, and I don't know if this is paradigm, it's definition. Having a clear definition, I think, of what it is, the outcome that we want to have, right? And that is disciples. And we want disciples who make disciples. And so I find that in my own context, had conversation with one of the pastors last week, and he said, well, what do we need to do to be ready to extend this fully alive vision and system to our congregation? And at first I said, no, it's all there. It's all ready to go. And then I stepped back and I said, no, wait, there's something that we need to do. We need to clarify our definition of a disciple so that we're all in agreement on that and ready for it. Because in the old paradigm, a disciple is whatever anybody happens to think it is, from wherever they've been before, or just, their understanding of it up to that point. So that's the thing that comes to my mind first.
Tell me more. Clarity is a beautiful word. One of my former mentors, named Alan Briggs, he just said, listen, clear is kind. And when clarity goes up, overwhelm goes down, right? And so for me, we've already talked about overwhelm already at the beginning of our conversation and stuff today. And Myra, tell me just a little bit more on just like what happens when there is not clarity in an endeavor like this.
Oh, that's a great question. The things that I see are, you don't move in the same direction, right? Because somebody is saying a disciple is this thing, and somebody else is saying, no, a disciple is this thing. And somebody's saying, oh, I could never be a disciple because that was the 12. And so you can't move in the same direction if you don't have a common goal defined. Mm-hmm. That probably is the biggest thing.
And it's an exciting thing too. When you have a staff, when you have a team or a group all headed in the same direction, that's fun. You actually get to take traction and all that kind of stuff.
True.
It sounded like you wanted to say something. Oh, okay. Yeah. So, just clarity with all of this stuff too. Brian, you talk to me a little bit about, with what Myra has said. What have you seen happen in your context and in your experience?
Well, for me, as I was, in leadership in those early years of ministry, a disciple was somebody that came to church. because that was the only kind of the discipleship process. I wouldn't have used that language back then, but that's what it was. If you're coming to church, you're regularly hearing sermons, you might be going to a small group, you might be in some type of other mentor relationship with somebody in the church. And as long as you're proximate, as long as you're there, that was kind of what was meant by a disciple. And I would say that's like a proximity definition, right? And that's not really adequate, which is kind of why our assimilation processes are good at getting people connected, but maybe not necessarily discipled. That requires an additional definition, and one that we talk about an awful lot here, which is transformation-based, measurable transformation. What are the objectives of being a disciple? And by the way, we ought to ask Jesus what those are, through the scriptures. And to me, it's the presence of Jesus in our life is the Holy Spirit. He said, I'll send the Spirit to you. I will come and I'll be with you. And the Spirit has certain outcomes in a person's life if we are partnering with the Spirit. And that is in who we're becoming. Our word for that's character. It's the fruit of the Spirit. And the partnership that we're engaging through the gifts that he's given us and the passions that he's given us, what we're doing, the type of ministries that we engage to bring shalom and human flourishing to the planet, our masterpiece mission, in other words, character and calling. That's what we do. A definition of a disciple is a person who's persistently growing in character and calling through the power of the Holy Spirit. So.
And I think in that there's one, when we think of the paradigms on what we're inviting people to kind of reimagine when we talk about this new results require a new thing, is I think it is what is a disciple? Because what you're talking about is like, if our definition of a disciple is someone who is highly involved in church and serving in an area of ministry, then our systems are going to follow, our time and energy are going to put into things that are going to get people connected. Now, from my experience, whether it's a church plant or whether it's a prevailing model established church, is that usually what that means is a really busy life, a really busy church. So that if you're a disciple-making church, kind of that equates to like a busy church, that you just have tons of things going on, because the more things you have going on means more people can attend, more people maybe come to church, and now all of a sudden we're giving ourselves A's in a scorecard that may not be lining up with the metrics and the outcomes of the Spirit. You guys got a response on that?
Well, just think of how alarming that is.
Yeah.
Because we've worked really hard to get all these things going.
Mm-hmm.
And we work really hard to keep them going. And we've got people in our church that are passionate about these things because we've perhaps recruited people to help us start these things. And now they've become the I don't want to say golden cows or whatever that is, all the language, how do you slay the golden cows in your church? It's not even that. It's people have attached their heart and value to these things. And now you're stuck in a sense, because it's kind of hard to go to something new when something that's present, I won't even say old.
Yeah.
Like, how do we begin to shift? That's big.
Yeah.
Huge. Myra, what about you?
So my thought on that is that it creates such dependency on the church. In order to do it, it says to people, you can't be the church unless you're in the church doing, right? And if you look at...
I think you got to say that one more time, Myra.
Yeah, and all of those words are very important. Yes.
Every one of them.
What it says to people is you can't be the church unless you're inside the church, connected within the church. Jesus' way was very different. And this is going to rock the church world to think about this, because being the church is what happens outside the church if you want to make earth a little bit more like heaven.
Sounds like the church kind of shifts from a teaching center to a training center, where the saints are equipped for the work of ministry to partner with the Spirit, where we live, work, and play, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's real important, Jason. It's like we're not trying to say don't do things in the church,
Absolutely.
right? What Myra said her first time through was, unless you're in the church doing. Like if you're just in the church doing this and doing this and doing this, and they're not helping accomplish that definition of a disciple, that's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in the church doing and it all aims at that definition of a disciple and releases those disciples to go make a difference in the world with the gifts and the passions that Jesus has given them to bring about heaven on earth, then I'd say go church. You're rocking it. But to get to that point, takes some real scrutiny and real sacrifice. And it doesn't need to be done over time. We actually say it probably takes about 3.5 to 5 years to truly change a culture. And that's probably the youngest, the earliest amount of time that it would take. But it's possible. And why wait to start next year? Start now. And it probably starts with less effort than you think. So that feeds well into what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I like that that you brought up that the 3 to 5 years. In my experience, maybe a little longer than that, but I think that's so important. And so often when we want change, when we seek to shift a paradigm, we want to completely upend and turn things over. And it really is most effective when we do it a shift, a step at a time or a step or two at a time. Just it's not an all or nothing when you want to do a new thing.
Yeah. So I think so far what we've kind of covered is we've talked about kind of like the necessity of having a clear definition of what a disciple is in someone's context, right? That we want to help a disciple grow in character and calling, and which is evidence of the Spirit, right? Fruit of the Spirit is who we are becoming. We're becoming more like Jesus, who was the perfect, God-man who was loving and joyful and peaceful and patient all the way to self-control. And then he knew his masterpiece mission. And so outcome-focused disciple making, which offers clarity, a focus on the outcomes. And there's one thing, and I think this is practical for anybody who is wrestling with what is a disciple, is I'd love to be able just to kind of chat about when does someone become a disciple? So you have what is a disciple, right? Which we've talked about, that from our perspective, it is somebody continuing to pursue Christ-centered growth in character and calling to make earth more like heaven. I may put that in my own words, but I think that encapsulates it.
I would tweak it just a little bit, Jason, before you keep going.
Sure.
It's one who's demonstrating growth, not pursuing
Right.
it. Like we've got to be careful with our words. Like I can pursue it for the rest of my life and not get anywhere. And as long as that's the goal, if I'm not getting anywhere, it's okay. I'm still pursuing it. If I'm demonstrating that transformation is the goal and I'm not demonstrating it, then I've got to solve a problem. So
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Sure.
Is that when does someone become a disciple and when is a disciple made? Because obviously that hints at the name of our organization, right? Disciples Made. And because I've had some conversations with pastors that, very much in line with that. If somebody is following Jesus, that immediately makes them a disciple. If somebody's baptized, immediately a disciple. Or if they come to, I think that's the thing. When somebody starts following Jesus, boom, a disciple. Or if they're attending church, boom, a disciple. Can we chat about that a little bit? Because I think that's helpful for clarity. And then getting into when is actually a disciple made, and all that kind of stuff. Because I know we've had some great conversations about that.
You want me to jump in, Myra, or you got something you're seeing?
It may be something that I've heard you say before. What came to mind was, especially as we think about a disciple, you're baptized and then you're a disciple. When I was born into my family of origin, I became a munt. by name, but it
Thanks for
wasn't.
clarifying, because I had no idea what a munt was.
That's what a munt is. Actually, it's a German for mouth. So go figure.
Okay.
I became a mouth. I was born a mouth.
I was born a mouth.
Mouthy Myra.
And now I'm a stranger. That's funny.
But so I was, that was who I was, but I hadn't fully become that until I grew into it and took on the character, the values, and those types of things. To a certain extent, I had the DNA for it, but that DNA hadn't expressed itself in those ways. The character hadn't grown to become what it meant down through my family's history of what it means to be a part of this family. And I was made when I could take those values myself and live them out in the world beyond.
Yeah. It's been the best definition for me. So Jason, you're talking about like what paradigms do we need to dismantle? We said one paradigm to dismantle is, a lack of clear definition. And the second one that we're talking about here is absolutely rejecting the idea that church member equals disciple or baptized person equals disciple. They're in the context where that can happen. But just picking up where Myra left off is, the way I've said it a little bit different. Like I kept asking the question, well, when is my son a man? When's my daughter a woman? Is it when she's 18 or he's 18? Is it when they can procreate? Like in the early teens or whatnot. And none of those were satisfactory. To me, it was when I just, for whatever reason, I just went to son. My son is a man when he can lead his own family and independent of me. He doesn't need me to do it. I want to go from being someone that he absolutely is dependent upon to someone that he is in friendship with, and that together we encourage one another on to that success. But to the extent that I, church leader, am setting things up to where people need us to live their spiritual life, we're keeping them as forever children or forever disciples in the making, not disciples that are made. And so that's the biggest change is like there's probably a big other thing that we need to dismantle is that disciples don't know how to live apart from dependence upon the church.
Yeah.
I don't feel like I need a church because I have all the habits that are involved in being a follower of Jesus. I've got a triad. I've got other godly men in my life that I meet with regularly for all the Hebrews requirements. Let us not stop meeting together. Well, I don't. I'm in a group. I'm in a triad. I'm in all these things. So I have everything I need. I still choose to participate in a local congregation because I find great value and I want to add great value to a local congregation, but I'm not dependent upon them. I could move tomorrow. That church could disband tomorrow, and I would still be okay. And that's the attitude I think we all as church leaders need to have. It's like we want to create you to not need us. We want to develop you to the point where you partner with us. If we can add that paradigm to what we're doing, we just upload the talent into the world, the spiritual talent and the spiritual leadership into every individual into the world. That's when we change the game.
That's huge. That is huge. Myra, were you going to say something?
Just the thought occurred to me, or maybe it's a question and thought. But I think that too, if we could do that, would have a huge impact on unity in the church.
Huge.
Oh, yeah. We're all on a similar mission. Mm-hmm. Like how far off track do we have to be to where our leadership time is arguing about aesthetics in a church building?
Right.
Like, how far off mission are we? And that's what the disunity comes around. It's like, we need to have someone pulling us in a common mission. And Jesus has got it. He's like, come over here. It's here. Come on, let's go. So it's good, Myra.
Brian, that reminds me of just how thankful I am for how you started off your new blog post that we posted today, talking about the 3 reasons to reimagine discipleship in 2025. And you started off with this, is that you asked the question, are followers of Jesus filling their communities with heaven's virtues of faith, hope, and love? Or is culture reducing Christians into shells of faith, filled with skepticism, anxiety, and division? And so I think that, growing in Christ-centered character and demonstrating growth in Christ-centered character and calling keeps us focused on the main thing. And we are able to thrive in healthy relationships. We're able to navigate conflict. We're able to partner and obey the prompts of the Spirit in our everyday life. And Myra, just that's such an important thing of unity is so needed, especially with just, what life tends to look like in this season. So that I wrote down some notes, and it reminds me of, one of the things, that we believe and that we teach here is that these outcomes of character and calling are fueled by spiritual habits, and the why is that without self-discipline, without spiritual disciplines, without the good and healthy habits of abiding in Jesus, of being devoted to God's word, to listening to the voice of Jesus, to partnering with Jesus in mission, is that those are the things that help people be self-feeders and self-leaders so that we can actually raise up partners. And so I know one of the paradigms, that I've been a part of a shift in my congregation, or I should say the shift hasn't happened, but it's, we're in the process of that shift, right? Is that this idea that, for Christians, that if we are participating in a Bible study, if we are serving in a small group, that is discipleship. And I think that one of the things that we just have to wrestle with is the more involved people are, if they are not, taking the words of Jesus, like the parable of the man who built his house on the rock, right? Is that, Jesus says, wise is that man because he put the words of Jesus into practice. And I think that's another shift is that disciple making is not just about learning, but it's about becoming. And that becoming happens the more that we abide, the more that, we're helping people to grow in that character and calling, and that they're becoming those self-feeders and self-leaders. And so, Brian, what do you have to say about that? Just about that, perhaps that paradigm shift of learning versus becoming.
I think we said a lot of that in the first kind of point that we made. Like, we need to break the idea that discipleship is just being there and participating in events. It needs to be focused on the outcomes. The part that seems to be exclusive to this, to add on, is that habits are vital. Like, spiritual habits are absolutely vital to that growth. And if there's a paradigm that's prevalent in disciple making that needs to be broken to enable that, it needs to be that spiritual habits are somehow either a waste of time or they are legalism. That's the big one that I've seen in my circles growing up. It's like, you don't want to do anything that's legalistic, or we don't want to present habits as you need to do this to make God happy. We don't do the disciplines to earn God's favor. It's grace that has merited us God's favor. It's Jesus' work that's merited God's favor, and we are just simply recipients of that grace. As a response to that grace, and as an act of gratitude, we respond with the spiritual habits of abiding with Jesus through all the different habits that we describe in our processes. And it's actually those habits that are the spiritual calisthenics that develop character and calling. It's not the content, it's not the things that we learn that develop those things. Those shape how we develop, but they don't do the developing. Just like reading about workout plans doesn't make you work out, it just makes you work out smarter. It's actually the crunches or the sit-ups or the push-ups or the weightlifting that actually accomplish the fitness in the diet. So I just think that's a major discipleship paradigm that needs to be broken.
Great Dallas Willard quote is that grace is opposed to earning, not effort. And
For sure.
And then I think the difference too between hope and wishful thinking, because I think a lot of times that as I engage with people kind of addressing this paradigm shift, is that we should be able to just exist, and that somehow that the Holy Spirit is going to transform us.
Yeah.
I don't.
I mean, if grace encourages no effort, then I think you've misunderstood grace. Like if I gave up everything I have so that you can have something and you didn't have anything and I had everything and there's no response to that, then I will consider that transaction, that gift, to have not been accepted appropriately. Now, I'm not trying to create a theological statement here, but for anybody that looks at grace and says, well, I got it, Jesus gave it, that's it, I think has never really met their own incredibly high degree of brokenness as compared to the brilliance and the beauty and the flawlessness of Jesus. Like, see your brokenness and your darkness compared to the brilliance of Jesus, or your lack of holiness to the holiness of Jesus. And if you're not put down onto the floor out of just sheer fear and terror at that thought, and then had Jesus hold your hand and pick you up and call you son or daughter, you can't respond to that with, oh, thanks, cheers. It just doesn't work. It's, if you loved me, I'm yours forever. I mean, if that's a paradigm to be broken, then break it and break it all.
Oh, I can tell just how much kind of passion there's behind your initial kind of response to that question.
Yeah.
Brian, I would love to hear, in the framework of raising your son, in the viewpoint of a disciple being made, when they then are making their own disciples, or your son becoming a man when he's able to lead his own family. Can you take that paradigm and put that over what we just talked about? Like, what would happen if we raised our families that way?
Of dependence upon Jesus like that, or gratitude?
Let's just say a lack of effort.
I'm not exactly sure the question. My apologies. I think I'm still back at that moment when Jesus picked me up.
So if we approached parenting like we do perhaps an old way of, or the way that we've been approaching discipleship in the past, I don't think my son would end up becoming a man.
For sure.
I think he'd become entitled and he wouldn't ever launch. He'd be a perpetual kid, which is what you're saying. And so
I got you. Okay. The question was simpler than I thought. Yeah.
I'm not that profound.
Yeah. I started here's the way I raised my kids. I told them this. I was like, here's the deal. Right now, I'm basically the person in your life that tells you what to do. I've got rules for the house. Mom and I have rules in the house. It wasn't just me. We've got rules, and our goal is for you to never have to obey these rules again. And their eyes lit up like, I can't wait for that, And I was like, and how fast you get there depends on you. It's my job to turn you into a person that adds value to the world and the people around you. And that takes a lot of training. And all my rules are going to be set up to help you actually accomplish that. And by the way, if you think any of my rules along the way aren't helping you accomplish that, you're welcome to challenge the rules. That doesn't mean I'll change them. It means I'll listen to you. But my goal is to make you a productive member of society. You could get there at 16. You could get there at 30. But how fast you get out from under my rules is all on you. And so we've embedded that whole made idea from the very beginning. And if there was one thing I did right with kids, it was that.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. So I want to take the last bit of our time to kind of get into some of the things in life and in leadership and in our church systems, et cetera, that actually hold us back from stepping into this new paradigm of discipleship. And so I want to recap real quick, kind of like the three paradigms that we've been able to address today. Is the first one is what ends up happening for a lack of a definition of a disciple. The next one would be challenging the assumption that just because you're a church member means that you're a disciple. And then the next one would be shifting the paradigm on really going on helping people become self-feeders and self-leaders, able to partner with Jesus in mission as well as partner with disciple makers as well, or partner with you as church staff or network leader or business leader, what have you. And so those three areas are kind of the three that have come to the surface today. Let's talk about the roadblocks. Let's talk about the fears. Let's talk about the hangups that can prevent us from making these shifts, the things that continue to hold us back into perhaps the status quo. Myra, what do you think? You want me to start with you?
Sure. I think the biggest thing that holds us back is the fear that we'll lose people.
Yeah.
That if we expect growth, or if we make them not dependent on us, that gives them freedom to leave, and that they might do that. And that can hold. I mean, that definitely will hold you back because it keeps you feeding that dependence cycle, teaching people to be dependent on the church, not only not independent of themselves, but shifting that dependence. What we ought to be doing is shifting that dependence to Jesus and off of the church. That's what gives people freedom.
Yeah. And Myra, what you just described was codependence.
True.
I need them to need me.
Yes.
As much as I need them to. Yeah.
I think that that fear of losing people can actually take two forms. Is that if we shift too much, we because people have expectations, and this is the way they like things, and I think for the most part, a lot of Christians and a lot of members of churches, they expect certain programs, they expect certain offerings. And parents maybe of young kids, they expect kids ministry. And if you change things or don't offer things at a certain level, they become dissatisfied and they leave. And I think that's, with that comes kind of a consumer mindset and this kind of thing. And so I think that there's fear of losing people because those people are frustrated, that you're no longer living up to their, what you've promised them and what you've offered in the past. Mm-hmm. I think there's a flip to that is actually quite exciting. And I know that Brian's talked about this a lot, is that when you are developing personal calling in people, or when you're walking with people and discipling people, and this Holy Spirit is awakening them to using their gifts and their passions and their story. Now you have to make the shift as an organization or a church to say, like, are we a sending church or are we not? And can we celebrate when God has awakened people to step into their personal calling, unique design, and masterpiece mission, that now all of a sudden we're saying goodbye to them because they're stepping into something amazing. So I think that there's like a double fear there potentially with that.
Well, there's two ways for people to move on, right? There's the moving on from dissatisfaction, and there's the moving on from having been well equipped and ready to go out because you have been made a disciple.
Yeah. And your relationship will end one day. How would you prefer it to end? And how will you structure your ministry to ensure that it's the right one? Yeah, that's a fun question.
Yeah, love it. So we got fear of losing people. Very, very valid. And I think also too is that the fear there, I think, could be too of like maybe losing money, revenue, this kind of thing, right? There's fear for that as well. Brian, what do you think about just your perspective that if you're working with a disciple maker who is struggling with the fear of losing people for either reason and everything that kind of comes with that, what might your questions to them be to help them kind of take that deep breath?
Let me change the question because I had prepared to answer a different one as I was listening. Is kind of what are these things that would hold us back? So I've got to get these out first. Okay. The ones that I thought of were, I don't feel equipped to do the kind of ministry that you're inviting me to do. When I put myself back to where I was prior to a pretty special moment in 2010, I knew I didn't know how to multiply. I knew I had tried many times, and I didn't know what was in the way, but I just assumed it was me. And I imagine there's an awful lot of people that feel that same way. And so what do we do about that? Well, that's where we hope we can come along and help you, not just with, tried and true, off the shelf solutions that you can start to incorporate right away. But we also have cohorts, like monthly cohorts that you can to sign into that are filled with other leaders at that same phase, so that you get the support from peers and you get coaching from people that have been there and done that. And you're doing that as you use proven tools to start to make that multiplication difference in your life. So we've tried our best to eradicate that concern, right? But that's a big one. The second one is I've been given a job to do that I barely have time to do. I'm going to be held accountable for that in my monthly meetings with my supervisor or at the end of the year. How do I add this to what I'm already doing would be a major fear. Again, we have a solution for that. And unfortunately, it's good news and not so good news. The not so good news is it does take a doubling up on the front end. I had to. Myra's had to. Myra actually had to quit the job that she didn't want to do in order to do this job at her church that she did want to. So it does take extra time. But if you do it right within that 2-year time frame, you've got people that are on board with you, that you've developed, that are peers that are helping you shoulder that load. So, and then the third thing would be, oh gosh, I've lost it now. So I've lost that third thing, Jason. What was it? I don't feel like I can do it. I've got this job. Yeah, I don't know. So now you're asking the question, how do you address the people that are afraid to lose people? Is that what the question that you asked me?
That was my question, yeah.
Okay. So I do have a good answer for that. And it goes back to what Myra said earlier. Am I counting on me for the results of people, or am I counting on Jesus? Now let me ask it a different way. Are those people my people, or are those people Jesus people? And here's the reason I say that. Because as a leader, I'm not an owner of people that help accomplish things. They're not my people. I'm a steward of people that Jesus brings into my orbit. And how I serve them is going to be either based upon Jesus' way of doing things or another way of doing things. And Jesus, if you look at at the timeline of his ministry, he only stewarded these people directly for 2.5 to 3 years. His goal was to get them to a place where they were released. He goes back to the Father, sends his Spirit to help them do that stuff that he trained them to do. That's very open-handed. And if we don't follow in suit, then I don't think we're stewarding well. And if we have this kind of a posture with our people, then how much influence are we allowing Jesus to have on them? However, if we release this into the God economy that says, if you hold on to it, you'll lose it. But if you lose it for my sake, you'll find it. Like, the answer to these people is just remember the kingdom economy here. If you try to hold on to anything, you'll lose it. Your small group, whatever it is. If you give it up for my sake, guess what? You're going to find it. You just got to trust Jesus on this. That's the simple answer to me. Yeah. If you can't get past that, you can't go anywhere anyway. No skill will help you get beyond that.
Yeah. And I think that kind of sat a little heavy with me, that we're willing to withhold what Jesus has for people out of our own fear and insecurity. And that's a heavy statement.
I was guilty of it. Mm-hmm. I mean, to me, that is heavy, Jason. I mean, it really is. That's super heavy. And it's probably heavy to anybody hearing it and trying to assimilate that for the first time. But so is a cancer diagnosis, right? If I started feeling pains tonight, went to the doctor and found out in 2 or 3 days I had cancer, that's heavy. But I want to know that news now so that I can do whatever I can before more time and more growth of the wrong thing has transpired. So it's kind of having a proper diagnosis, even if it's heavy, is such good news because there's something I can do about that now.
Yeah.
So for what that's worth.
Yeah.
I think another response that I would give to that person, I think you start with that, God's economy thing, hold it, you're going to lose it. But I think another thing is we probably all have examples of those who equipped us, those who we were maybe their best volunteer or whatever it is, their best mentee. And we've moved on from them, but we keep coming back to them. And think about if you hold someone back and then they do break free, they're not going to want to come back to you. So, open hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dan Sutherland was the first person that ever looked at me and said, he didn't say it. His actions just demonstrated it. You have more than you know. I'm going to pull it out of you, and I don't care where you use it. I just want you to shine for Jesus, because that's the best thing that I can do for Jesus is to, what did he say? Feed my sheep.
Yeah. That's so good. So just to kind of recap some of these places that perhaps these disciple makers get stuck. For those of you who are listening, maybe you can resonate. So we have just the fear of losing people. We got the fear of not being equipped to even know how to make a disciple, let alone a disciple maker. And then wondering if just the added time and energy and that question of, is it worth it? So those are the 3 areas of getting stuck. And so, Brian, I want to throw to you because it's 1:56. I want to wrap this up. But I always know that there might be one other thing that you might want to make sure that some type of nugget before we get off our call today.
Sure. We dropped a lot of heavy stuff in here. We're talking about paradigms to break, and there's a lot of paradigms to break, and it's hard. But I've got to go back, particularly in context of the heaviness of some of these topics that we've discussed, to obedience is greater than competence. We've got to break the mindset that it's our skill set and our capacity that sets a cap on what Jesus can do in my environment. And that's true if you lean into your own ways. But Proverbs says, lean not on your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him. Obedience is greater than competence. Start engaging. If there's only one thing that you can start new this year, is start reading scripture with the intent of asking Jesus, what are you trying to teach me and what do you want me to do about it? And just follow what he says. And if that doesn't take you somewhere, that you haven't been before, I don't know, email me and complain, I guess. I don't know. But, that would be the one thing. If everything else here is overwhelming and you haven't done that, listen, I was 15 years into ministry before I stopped using my sermon preparation time as my devotional time. 15 years in, life started changing for me. Like all the discipleship stuff, Disciples Made and all, started about 9 months to a year after I started to read the scripture every day just to get close to Jesus. I would encourage you to do the same.
Love it. Yeah. Myra, any last thoughts?
No, just start somewhere.
Yeah.
Love it. Well,
start. Easier to steer a moving car than a parked one.
Very much so. Very much so.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank everybody who has taken the time to listen to this today, as we have done the best we can to walk you through what we will be focusing on all month long throughout January 2025, and that is new results require a new thing. This fully alive life, this way of life, this character times calling equals impact way of life is a rediscovered way to experience fullness with Jesus and multiply disciples. And so Brian Phipps, we just dropped a new blog post at disciplesmade.com today that I would encourage you to go read. 3 reasons to reimagine discipleship in 2025. Fantastic article that we hope adds value to your life. And if you need just some clarity on how in your context, whether you are a church leader, whether you are a network leader, or whether you are a business leader, a marketplace missionary, we want to be your strategic partner to help you make and multiply disciples this year. And so we have a webinar coming up on January 15th at 2 p.m. Central Time. Go to disciplesmade.com/training, and you can sign up your whole team for you on there. It's going to be a fantastic 90-minute webinar that will add so much value to you. It will not only just be us on this call, but also some other Disciples Made coaches. And so we would love to continue the conversation, and like I said, we want to be your strategic partner. So we are with you, and we want to see you succeed, and we want to see disciples made. So until next time, live fully alive, and let's multiply. Have a great day.